Alright, today is going to be about progressive overload, hence progressive overload masterclass. So, what is progressive overload? It's the concept that you get stronger over time. Right? It's the whole thing with the thumbnail, Milo of Criton, something. Basically, Milo demonstrates progressive overload. So basically, the legend, or how the legend goes, was, Milo was born, and I don't remember what age he started this, but he started at some age, really young, and he would carry up a calf up the mountain and back, I believe. Yeah. And so as he grew, the calf grew as well. So you can see where this is heading, right? As he grew older and stronger, or as he grew older, the calf grew older and therefore bigger. And he grew stronger. And so that kept on going until, you would see him carry this like gigantic 200-pound lamb with him up the mountain and back. It's like, sheesh. That's progressive overload. Although I can't necessarily guarantee that you will, be able to gain that much strength. But that is the concept. It's getting stronger over time. And with progressive overload, it's essential to building muscle. If you want to get jacked, if you want to get big, you're going to need to get strong. At least stronger than you were before. Right? If you're not stronger than you were before you started lifting, yeah, you haven't gained anything. I'm sorry. You haven't gained anything, man. No strength, no muscle, nothing. Maybe fat. I'm sorry. But regardless, that is the concept of progressive overload. And so there are many ways to progress in a way. There's more ways than just add weight. Because eventually you're going to hit a plateau. You're going to hit a wall. And well, no matter how far you walk backwards and then charge the wall, you're not going to break it. You need to find some way else to climb over it, to go around it, to go underneath it, some way to overcome that wall. And that's why you need other ways to progress than just weight. You need to. And so, like I said, the first way is simply weight. You're doing an exercise, it gets easy again, so you add weight to make it harder again, right? So it's very simple, very easy to do if you're in a gym with barbells, dumbbells, with free weights, with weights in general, machines, very easy to do, right? The problem with weight, as I've already said, is that you'll hit a plateau. Right? You can't always add more weight. If you are able to add 5 pounds to your bench every single week for your entire training career, you would be a world-class bench presser. Possibly. Right? Like, if you trained for 10 years and you kept going like that, 5 pounds each week, the 52 weeks in a year, so that's 520 weeks. 520 times 5, that's, what is that? That's math. 2,600 pounds. Imagine being able to bench press 2,600 pounds. Like, what the fuck? That's more than 1,000 kilograms. Like, holy shit. Like, no one's ever done that. No one's ever done that. And if you were able to do that, then you'd crush every single record by like 500 miles. The most a person can squat right now in powerlifting is like 1,100 pounds, I think, somewhere along those lines. It's like you'd double that. You'd be over double the amount a person can maximally squat. Like, holy shit. You would be Superman, essentially. So yeah, weight will not always work. So, the second is volume. Volume is basically adding more hard sets. Adding more volume or more work, more sets, more hard sets in the gym, right? This can be in the form of just adding an extra set to that same exercise, adding more exercises, and just more hard sets. Hard sets being the sets that are challenging sets that you do. It's like, okay, that was That was hard. Not like, okay, did the set. I could have probably done 5 more reps. Not those, right? Not those whatsoever. No. Hard sets. The limitation with adding more volume or hard sets is that you'll be hella fatigued. You'll be more fatigued with the more volume that you add. Because there's only so much volume you can do that you can recover from. And there's a certain point, and once you hit that certain point, your recovery just crashes. And you feel like shit, everything's bad, everything's terrible, life's bleak. Yeah, you don't want that. Right? So there's a limit to volume as well. The third is rest times. You do a set, you rest, right? By progressing with rest times, you just decrease that rest. So let's say you rest 3 minutes on bench press. Maybe next week you do 2.5 minutes per set now. That's how you progress in rest times. So the benefit of progressing with rest times is that it builds your work capacity. It basically builds your ability to do work. It's not quite endurance like when you run a marathon, but it's more like endurance for muscular work. It's endurance for being able to do a lot of sets, being able to recover enough for the next set, improving that aspect of your fitness. That's work capacity. At the same time, right, you can't just take no rest in between sets. Like there's a minimum of rest that you need, right? And you can't just not rest. So that's the limitation with progressing with rest times. The fourth is tempo. Tempo is basically how fast certain parts of the exercise are. So let's say doing a bench press, right? Bench press. The press up, that's the concentric. The lowering down, that's the eccentric. So tempo would basically be changing how fast each portion of the lift is. So let's say if I want to have an explosive tempo, I would push really fast up on the concentric, and then I'd either lower it down really fast if I want to go pure explosive, or I could lower it down slowly if I wanted to do an explosive negative, right? So that's tempo. And so measuring tempo is really hard when you're in the midst of it, right? It's really hard to objectively count when you're doing a rep because the rep's going to be hard, right? Like if you're squatting, like the seconds are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be much faster, right? So if you don't have an objective measurement, it's going to be hard just counting in your head, which is where some people have accelerometers, which is basically something you attach to the bar, and it basically just tells you like how fast each portion of the lift is going. It's very simple, and it's gaining a lot of popularity, but it is something you need to buy, right? If you want to have the most objective measurement device. The fifth way is through range of motion. So the best example to illustrate this is with lateral raises, right? If you've done lateral raises, and you've tried to progress to the next dumbbells, let's say for example, that it's a lot harder to do the heavier weight than it was to do the easier weight, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? But it's harder than you would expect, right? Like, say if you can get 15 reps on, let's say 20 weights, 20 pounds for dumbbell raises, and you go to 25, but then you can only get 10, right? It's like that jump was really high, and so here's where range of motion progression can be really helpful, because especially on lateral raises, right? The hardest part is at the very top, is where your arm is parallel, right? Because of gravity and torque and physics, basically. So what you can do instead is you can gradually progress by increasing the range of motion. Say that you go like, I can't exactly show you, but like you go to like 30% of range of motion for 15 reps, and then you go to 40% for 14, and then you go to 50% for 13, and then you get stronger, so you get 60% for 14, right? And then you just keep on increasing the range of motion until you can reach full range of motion for the same amount of reps, and then you can progress to the next weight, right? That's progressing with range of motion. At the same time, right, too much range of motion is detrimental. Going too deep in a hack squat is going to stretch your lower back a lot. Going too deep in a Romanian deadlift is going to stretch your lower back a lot. But going too deep in someone might be good, might be bad. Hey, your discretion. But anyway, Going too far in range of motion can be detrimental. The sixth is levers, and this is really only applicable to calisthenics. Because in calisthenics, there's all kinds of levers: front lever, back lever, planche, iron cross, human flag, all sorts of like positions you hold. And to progress to these final forms, you need to start with the basics, right? Basics are basically easier levers than the final form, right? So for front lever, you have tuck, advanced tuck, frog, straddle, half lay, one leg, full. I don't even know if that's the correct order or not, but there's so many different progressions to get to that final form, and then it all changes how the lever is, right? So the longer the lever is, the harder it's going to be, right? In tuck, your knees are against your chest, so it's the smallest lever you can do. Advanced tuck is when your legs are perpendicular to your body. It's harder. One leg out, so lever's a little longer. Straddle, even longer. Full, the longest. You get it. And so sometimes this also changes the muscles that were recruited. So for a push-up, right? If you want to make a push-up harder in terms of levers, you'd lean more forward. You'd have your hands stay the same, but you would lean yourself forward. And instead of recruiting more of your chest, you'd be recruiting more of your shoulders. And so there are some instances where increasing the lever point is going to make the exercise harder, for sure. But it's going to target different muscles than you perhaps would have wanted it to. And so that's the detriment for progressing with levers. So I told you about 6 different ways to progress, and literally every single one there's a flaw, right? Every single one there's a flaw. But that is only if you use them on their own, right? If you only progress with weight, and then switch to only volume, and then switch to only range of motion, then switch only to rest times, and if you do them individually. But if you combine them, if you progress in weight and volume, if you progress in weight and rest times, weight, volume, and range of motion, right? If you use multiple of these, they will sort of cover each other's weaknesses in a sense. So like when you're done progressing with weight, or when you can't progress more with weight, at the same time, if you're also doing volume work, you can progress with volume as well, right? So they cover up each other's weaknesses. And so if you want to progress the best, you want to use a multitude of these ways of progression: weight, volume, rest times, tempo, range of motion, levers. I've given you 6, and 5 of them can be used in any gym. One of them is pure calisthenics for my calisthenics bros out there. So get to it.